and welcome back to Demystifying Spiritual Practices. And I have a special guest with me today, Jodi Grubbs, all the way from North Carolina. And I just wondered, Jodi, if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Sue. This is so fun. Sue and I have known each other since 2017, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. Somewhere around there.
So I'm a slow living advocate. I write and speak about slow living habits and how to slow down your pace a little bit to your what your soul desires. You know what your body and your soul really want. And I have a podcast called Our Island in the City, and I live in the Raleigh, North Carolina area.
Nice. Welcome. And you have a unique approach to slow living. Do you want to mention that a little bit for our listeners? Just where you grew up.
Yeah. So island life sort of runs in my blood, I say. I grew up in the Caribbean on an island called Bonaire. It's near Aruba. And because I was there for 16 years, I pull that into my slow living advocacy. Not like everything is, with a little drink and a palm tree, but just the idea. There's a lot of community on the island, and people do take their time, a lot of friendliness and contemplation. So just an unhurried way of living and just being deeper in community and being present, really.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds like a beautiful way to grow up and a place to grow up.
Yes.
So did you always carry that into your life in when you came to the States? Like, did that carry over, or was that really hard to hang on to?
Over the years, it was hard to hang on to because I got sort of sucked into the lifestyle here in America, where everything was kind of bigger and better and faster and, more about production, more about doing than being. And so I would say, I had many seasons in my life, I've had to go back and sort of implement that again.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's easy to just get wrapped up in whatever culture you're living in at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's an encouragement, though, to hear that, because, people think, well, once we've gotten to this point, we'll never go back. But it's a continual lifelong learning kind of process. So what this is all about is spiritual practices. So I like to think of your slow living as like a spiritual kind of practice, because my definition of spiritual practices is something that we do repeatedly that keeps bringing us back to God and community with Him. And so what would you say your definition of a spiritual practice is?
Yeah. So even though we didn't talk about this, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. I say it's either, an ancient or even a new spiritual way of slowing down and being with God and yourself. Anything that can help you draw closer in a relationship or a friendship with God, with the Trinity, and just being purposeful about that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like we said, it's never once and done.
No.
So when did this become like a really intentional thing for you, and how did that happen? Could you describe that?
Yeah. So the slowing down.
Yeah. Making it an intentional practice in your life.
Yeah. Sue, I think as far back as I can remember. So, I've had seasons where slowing down is chosen for me. That's not as fun, like if I've had knee surgery or, something has happened, or my husband was, out of work for a few months. Those things are always really hard. But I think the one that really got me was when my daughter was about 5, I just would keep getting sick every fall. So I would get pneumonia, bronchitis, strep. And finally, my doctor said, you've got to slow down. Like, you just got to quit volunteering, the stuff you're doing at church, like community is just too much. Your body just can't take it. And so your immune system is, it's affecting your health. And so I would say probably 12 years ago was when it hit me so hard. I had to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's making a choice between good things and good things, or the better thing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Hard.
Nothing was really bad.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. I also was a people pleaser and I had FOMO. I just didn't want to miss out on anything. And so, I think I had to learn that that wasn't really true. And that whatever was congruent with my lifestyle and my family and my age and where I was, what season I was in, those things were right. And I didn't have to do everything.
Right. Yeah. That's a tough one for us people pleasers or recovering people pleasers to
Yeah.
recognize and to stay in that because it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to get drawn into more and more, you know. So and I think it's with any spiritual practice, it has to be intentionally chosen over and over and over again. And that's when it makes a difference. Like you can't flit from this to this and this and expect to have the depth that you're after, right? And we hear a lot
Right.
about rhythms of life and a structure for your spiritual life, and so yeah, it just reminds me that it has to be intentional, chosen over and over every day.
I think a little light bulb went off for me recently when I realized, oh, that's why sometimes they're called spiritual disciplines and or spiritual practices. It's the discipline is the part of where you just, teach yourself to be and to do this on a regular basis, right?
Right. Yeah. So it takes discipline and it takes practice. Right.
Yeah.
um, so what would you be a couple of little tips for those just starting out, desiring this slower living, a couple of tips of steps that we can take to help slow us down?
Yeah. So solitude and silence is one of my favorite things to do. I am an introvert, but I'm finding even for my friends who are extroverts, they do need it even to keep being who they truly are. And so it can sound scary at first, but it doesn't mean you have to go away somewhere and be silent for 7 days, just even in the morning, sitting in my chair having coffee, like just not always doing something. Whether that's scrolling on my phone or just doing something that I don't need to be doing right that moment. And so just being still, we think of things, whether, we hear God speak to us in that small whisper, or whether it's just understanding ourselves better or thinking of something we need to do that day. So just being, solitude doesn't have to mean loneliness. It can just mean quiet. Yeah. And then another one would be being fully present. I'm starting to understand that it's just so important for the person in front of us, for them to know that they're seen.
Yes.
But we need that too. We also need them to kind of quiet down and make us their focus. And when we both do that, the relationship actually grows faster and deeper that way. And so whether it's with a friend or, a coworker or a neighbor, it's almost better to have short bursts every once in a while that are very meaningful. And you're standing in the road talking in front of the mailbox, but you're not also checking your phone and also, all the things.
Yeah.
So being face to face and being present is a real big thing for our spiritual growth. And I didn't realize that till maybe last year, just reading more about it. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. And we come away different when we've met with someone that is truly present with us, right?
Right.
We feel it, the difference in our inner being, like I've been seen and I've been cared for. The real me has been cared for, not the surface me. That's really beautiful.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and it's not that hard to do. So
Yeah, but I think, I think we do need to start with the silence and solitude in order for us to be able to offer that to someone else. Right.
that is so right. You are right. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That has become something that is important for me. And not that I'm consistent at it, but I recognize that is where I become settled in who I am in those moments of silence and solitude. And I'm less likely to chase after the things that I think give me meaning, because I've already established my identity in being with God. So yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite words, settled. I a few months ago, my spiritual director said, I keep hearing you say the word settled. I thought, oh wow, yeah. I'm 50, so it's like, you do regret not always having that over the years, but
Right.
we learn as we get older too what's really important. So
Yeah.
when you just said settled, I thought, yes, it's such a peaceful feeling. Yeah.
It's a beautiful word. And it reminds me of the word abide too,
Mm.
that you're at home, you're settled, you're rooted, those kinds of
Yeah.
words. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think I think that's what we're all after when we think about spiritual practices. This is what we're looking for, to be all those things. And we need to find the things that resonate with us. Not all spiritual practices are for all people, right? But I
Right.
really think the slow living should be for all people because we live at such a crazy pace. Anyway, so we have
Yeah.
some really great news, because for all those interested in learning more about slow living, Jodi has just finished a book. And when is it going to be coming out? So we can count the days.
Yes, thank you. Sue has walked with me on this journey for quite a while, actually. And so I handed in my manuscript to IVP, which is InterVarsity Press, last week, and it will be out probably March of 2024.
March
A little,
2024.
these things do not move fast, I have been told.
Yes, yes. Well, we have two tips that we can start with. Um, and then we can anticipate that book coming out March 2024. Yay.
Yes,
It's going to be great.
absolutely.
I've had the privilege of reading a few words that were in process, and I know it's going to meet us all. Um, so just one last thing before
Okay.
we close. For those that are just starting into spiritual practices, wondering, is this for me? This feels weird. What encouragement would you have to offer to start?
Yeah. So I think we have this idea that it has to be either, prayer or meditation or scripture. And those are all really good things. But in the book, I write about some spiritual practices in one of the chapters. And for me, one is so simple. So it's just taking my phone and documenting nature,
Mm,
beauty. And it's about, awakening something in us that God has created. And so I think even that's a spiritual practice, is paying attention to creation
yeah.
and not necessarily making a scrapbook. You could keep it on your phone and just,
Mm,
maybe not even write about it, but just document it. It's like I
yeah.
call it photo journaling.
Mm,
So I would say to someone, start with something easy
mhm,
that really appeals to you as a person, your personality and the way that you've been made.
mhm.
Some people, they're not able to just sit for 30 minutes in the morning and have like a traditional quiet time. They talk to God when they are walking their dog in the forest,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
that's okay.
Yeah,
That's your communing with God. And so, if you find something that works really well, just ask God, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? This feels congruent, with how you made me.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, I agree. That's so important that it's it's it feels natural to us. Always a bit of a stretch,
yeah,
right? But that it aligns with who we are, because instead of beating ourselves up because we can't do this like that person does, let's find the things that we are wired for and do those things. Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, it takes slowing down to figure that out. So,
Mm-hmm. It sure does.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
what, can you share the name of your book so that we can be on the lookout for that?
Well, it's had several different titles. And so the latest might have something to do with like this whole shift over to slow living.
Okay.
I think it's such a process.
Mm,
So I
yeah.
won't know for a while
Okay. We'll
what
just,
it ends up being. But I do talk about that word in the book a lot. So
okay.
we'll see.
So I'll
Yeah.
put a note, some notes in the show notes at the bottom of where people can find you and follow along with the journey. And then you'll let us know when the book is ready for pre-order. And we're going to go do that because it's important for authors that we
Oh,
pre-order.
thank you, Sue. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here, Jodi.
Thank you for having me on, and just thank you for being a personal friend and supporting me through this writing journey, Sue.